Welcome to the Thrive Tribe podcast, a place to discover a community of practitioners who can support women to achieve good health beyond just the traditional methods. It's also a place to empower women with the knowledge they need to better prepare their body, mind, and spirit at each stage of their life, from periods through menopause. I'm Chandani Tourani, your host and functional nutritional therapist. I look at each individual's unique needs to manage their long-term health challenges and prevent future issues long before symptoms appear. Our body whispers. I work together with you to identify those signals and address critical areas to set you on a path of vibrant health and vitality. Our sponsor, Blissamy, is your personal health companion, a smart platform that blends your biometrics, life stage, and wellness goals to create a tailored health journey just for you. Whether you're navigating women's health, chronic care, or mental well-being, Blissamy guides you to the right holistic providers, products, and programs all in one place. Hi everyone, we have with us the wonderful Angie Tourani. She is a body talk practitioner here in Hong Kong, and I have been going to her for many years. She's an incredible healer, one of the best I've experienced. She took me through a very difficult time in my life. And before we get into everything, I want you, Angie, to just share a little bit about what is body talk, but then also what brought you to body talk.
Thank you for having me on the show. I'm Angie Tourani. What I practice is called Body Talk System. It's a mind-body medicine. It's a consciousness-based medicine. How I got into it was in 2005. I had little kids. And as a mom, I was trying to find the best solution for them. I was just tired of giving them antibiotics for ear infections, colds, flus, and to the extent that there was a surgery required. So in my quest for looking for holistic, safe, non-invasive modality to support my children's health, I stumbled over Body Talk System.
Okay.
So it was more intuitive decision. I went for one talk, got a little bit of what they were talking, but out of trust, just signed up for the seminar. And those 4 days of workshop was, I would say, totally transformational. It was beginning of a new chapter. Everyone who was in that workshop was there because they've seen miraculous results with the Body Talk System. And I was like a totally blank new person there.
Yeah.
So after that 4 days of seminar, I started using Body Talk treatments for my kids. And I saw amazing results.
Yeah.
These kids who were falling sick so frequently, they'll go on throughout the year without a single sick leave.
Oh, wow.
So this workshop was, oh my God, it was just a blessing. I would say Body Talk System is such a powerful tool for parents. It just saves you so much of everyday sickness and colds, flus, and so on. There's a shorter version of program called Body Talk XS, which I would say it's a one-day simple 5 techniques that you can learn and use it on your family.
I think I did that with you, right?
Yeah.
Yes, tapping.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's such a powerful tool that once you use it on everyday basis, you literally can look after 50 to 60% of your kids' health problems. The immune system, mood swings, focus, concentration issues. So yeah, that was the starting point. And once I saw these amazing results with my kids, I basically certified as a practitioner and then as an instructor. And I've been teaching and practicing this for over 2 decades, teaching it internationally.
Yeah, I went to that Body Talk Access seminar, right? And just very simple tapping you taught. I didn't have all the skills of the mindscape and everything that we're going to get into in a little bit, but my mother-in-law at that time was going through cancer treatment and she had lost all her hair, just a lot of pain in the body. And I remember I would go just to do the tapping. I saw a huge relief. And it was one of those moments where, yes, I didn't solve the problem that she had, but I gave her a better few hours. And I'm just someone who did 1 day seminar with you. So that was, I can definitely say it, that every time I've come to you, I remember when I was first moved to Hong Kong, I was feeling very sick. I just came here and I got slammed by the city and the humidity and everything. And nothing would calm my nervous system. I had like severe twitching and itching, if you remember. And honestly, like I came to you and you were the first person who could just shut it down, like calm it down. And you actually addressed a lot of things that I didn't expect you to, right? Something I did the day before and said, hey, this conversation or this experience with your husband or family member is what's triggered this flare. or this subconscious concern? Are you worried about this person? And I was like, yes, actually. How did you know that? And I really thought you were some psychic abilities, because I'll be frank, I went to a body talk practitioner before you, had a very opposite experience. So I was very nervous about coming to you, but my husband was like, look, the reviews are great. And I remember you saying, no, this is not psychic ability. This is accessing a different level of the mind.
Mhm.
Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure.
Because I do think that there's some, when you talk about energy or talking to the body, people feel like there's some kind of mystical aspect to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's all science. So in quantum science, we all entangled, right? So two particles, if they have been in entanglement, that communication and entanglement is always there, no matter where these particles are. Now, we all are part of this universal consciousness, and there is a certain level of quantum entanglement. And when you're working with mind, has no barrier of time and space. So there's a particular workshop which is developed by the founder of Body Talk System, which is called Mindscape, which is about getting into this altered, relaxed alpha state of mind where you have got heightened intuition, creativity, where you can tap into that universal consciousness and download information. So this could be basically picking up information without having your logic mind engaged with it. So when we're talking about communication, is just not at physical level, it's at energetic level. You're communicating through your body language, and more importantly, you're communicating through your psychic abilities and mental, that brain waves. So now that we're having this conversation, we are in a better brain wave, which means if I had to hook the brain with the computer and measure the brain waves, it's a very fast brain waves. Alpha brain waves is a relaxed brain waves, 3 to 7 hertz per second.
Okay.
This is your brain wave when you wake up in the morning, when you're just going off to sleep. All your bright solutions and answers are there when you're getting up in the morning, or when you're totally relaxed, because all that information exists and now you're just able to tune into it. So basically, with these treatments, as a practitioner, it's about accessing that relaxed alpha state of mind where I'm able to read your energetic blueprint. And that's how we do distance treatments. So I could have clients any part of the world, and using that state of mind, you're able to connect and communicate and work with them.
That's fascinating what you just said, just personally for me, because I'm someone who gets extremely involved in whatever work I'm doing. So even when I was working as a strategy consultant or product manager or anything, I would always do, I feel like 50 to 60% of my job in my sleep, which was very insane actually. And I would wake up and I'd have a plan. And I remember being like, oh, this is, I thought it was disturbing my sleep, but you're saying it's actually a place where you're in that state of calm, you're able to organize everything. Wow. Okay. So you as a practitioner to get into that state.
Yes.
And then what is body talk then?
Body talk is about listening to your body's innate wisdom. So innate wisdom is our body's inborn natural ability to heal. So let's say if I cut my finger, within few days I've got a completely new skin. Or if you look at an embryo, how from this one cell it creates a whole embryo and then a full formed baby. The wisdom that's driving that whole process is our innate inborn ability to heal. Now, many a times this innate wisdom function is compromised, and that's why a person could have a tumor or various stresses or labels and diagnoses, because somewhere this body's natural ability to heal has been compromised. What would compromise it is stress. Stress could be in any form: emotional, psychological, relationships, toxins, heavy metals, to literally somebody on chemotherapy and being put on a lot of medication. So stress in chemical, mechanical, or psychological form. Now, once the stress is accumulated, it can compromise our body's ability to heal.
Right.
The way we look at health, it's all about communication networks. So if I'm looking at myself and calling myself Angie, I'm looking at trillions of human cells, and then microbes, which are billions of bacteria and viruses, everything under the skin, which is like a huge community. Now, each aspect of this community is constantly in a communication. So it's like a interactive web of communication. Right. And once this communication is compromised, that leads to disease. So let's say in our country, if the postage is stopped, or Wi-Fi, or the roads are blocked, everything will collapse. So similarly, in our body mind, when these communication networks are compromised, so let's say a cell that is sending out thousands of signals is now able to send out and communicate only with 10 cells. That compromised communication network translates into diseases and imbalances. So my role as a body talk practitioner is to listen to your body's innate wisdom, to identify what are those stressors that are compromising these communication networks.
Right.
Now, these stressors could be anything that's accumulated over time. It could be stuff in fetal life. It could be vaccines, toxins, a tough breakup, somebody going through bankruptcy, various different accumulated data of memory that your body
Right.
hasn't processed. Because many a times when we are under stress, body is suppressing all that stress because you're in a coping mechanism. You have to deal with the situation, body will suppress it, the stress or that particular emotion, to deal with it later. Now, that accumulated stress could cause these communication breakups and trigger the epigenetics to switch on any particular disease. So as a body talk practitioner, my role is to listen to your body's story. What are those stresses that are compromising your body's healthy functioning, and then use treatment to support it.
Wow. Okay. I think one thing you just said to me was that the cell's ability gets compromised. So your cellular function actually gets compromised due to stress. And that's by design, because our body needs to prioritize like fight or flight symptoms or like a stress symptom. That's by design. It's actually because you need to put all of your energy into running, like in back when we were actually hunting and hunter-gatherers, actually running away from
stressor,
a stressor or something that's trying to eat you or hurt you.
You're spot on.
So the cellular dysfunction is actually by design to redirect resources of your body. And often when it gets too high, it sometimes triggers something called the cell danger response, where your cells actually stop making energy for these functions. And then that actually makes these cells start to die. Interesting.
Yeah, it's all about survival mechanism. So when you're under threat, so as you mentioned, in caveman's time, the stressor would be seeing the tiger once in a couple of days. In a modern society, the way our brain's biological networks work, it could be a stressful email, a phone conversation, thinking about that work deadline. It's like you are facing those hundreds of tigers throughout the day, which means your brain is constantly switched on into the survival mode. When you're in a survival mode, it's all about using up this energy to survive this moment. Anything that's long-term is not the body's responsibility, which could be your reproductive system, your hormones, your digestive system, a cancer cell that can kill you in a few years. That's seen as a long-term project. And it's all about survive this moment and that mimicking that survival mode, which is triggered so frequently nowadays. And that's what contributes to chronic stress, which means it's like the accelerator of the car that you're pressing 100 times and burning out all your fuel.
And then you're constantly creating adrenaline because of it. And that adrenaline is actually, if you don't actually get up and go run like you're supposed to biologically, it actually just continues to hurt the cells and everything.
And that's how the inflammatory conditions, we have got all these digestive issues and skin conditions, autoimmune conditions, simply the translation of the brain being in heightened fight, flight, survival mode.
Fascinating.
And your body cannot repair. So we have got sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic is your fight, flight, survival mode. Parasympathetic is your repair and regeneration. Now, no matter what you do, unless your brain shifts into this parasympathetic nervous system, repair, growth, regeneration would not happen. So even though innate wisdom is extremely intelligent, powerful to repair and heal, but it needs to be in that relaxation mode. And that's where body talk system comes in. It's about clearing all those stresses and shifting and retuning the body into this parasympathetic nervous system so it can repair, heal, and regenerate.
Okay, so let's talk about stressors. And stressors could be toxins, as you mentioned, an email or like a conversation with someone. But there's other stressors in our life, like memories, like you said, trauma, and trauma comes in different forms. But how does this kind of long-standing traumas, how does that play? Is it similar? Because it's not just a startle, right? The email is a startle moment, it creates that stress. The toxin is long-term, but how does that long-term versus short-term?
Most of it is all long-term, because let's say as a child, you went through a trauma. This child had some medical emergencies, and they were put aside from the mother, and all the stimulus that got imprinted where the sense of sound, touch, taste, everything triggered the survival mode.
Right.
So now even this child has got perfectly good family, health, everything is beautiful. And let's say this child is 20 years old and the brain is, and all those senses are still imprinted with that survival mode and trauma that got imprinted. And each trigger that comes in the environment, you're activating the old programming. So most of the time when we're talking about stress, it's through our filters, right? So let's say there are two people working in the same toxic environment, and one is getting all the anxiety, panic attacks, another one could be breezing through it.
Right.
So when we're talking about stress, it's like what is imprinted in our memory.
Right.
And that's what we call post-traumatic stress syndrome. When somebody has gone through a major stress, but the brain has not got opportunity to rewire itself, that now the stress is over and I can resettle into my harmonious mode.
Right.
If that process has not happened, even though the stress has passed, and this could be 10 years later, they are still living from that post-traumatic stress syndrome, where the nervous system, which is centers of the brain called amygdala complex, that's constantly scanning for stress, for survival, and this is for our own protection. So let's say you had a food poisoning, and that food poisoning was dangerous to the extent that you could have died.
Right.
Now, nervous system records each and every information, the sound, the smell, the color, taste, everything. And this is all stored in the memory. So next time, if any similar stimulus comes through, it triggers that stress response.
Oh.
And the purpose is to save you, save your life. And that's why many times allergies, intolerances are coming from all these stress and the post-traumatic stress syndromes that have been compressed in the nervous system.
Yeah.
So unless we work with that, and that's what the body talk treatments are all about, finding that story from the subconscious mind that is triggering the amygdala complex into that stress response and diffusing it, neutralizing it, and reorienting the nervous system so it can settle down. That was history and this is present, I'm safe. And it doesn't need to keep resetting that fire alarm and stress mode, which in terms of immune system will show up as inflammation. So all our autoimmune conditions, to diabetes, to high blood pressure, food sensitivities, everything is when the immune system is in stress mode. The stress triggers the immune system into survival mode, and it's overproducing inflammatory hormones, scanning everything as a danger, and keeps attacking.
Okay, very interesting. So this is like the stressors in our life. But what about, and this is something we've talked about even for myself. I remember when I was sick, often I was like, I don't have any problem. What is this sickness that I'm feeling? And I know that's a weird thing to say, but it almost felt like a foreign body. And I think this happens to people who are chronically ill. Like something is stopping you. Something that is not yours is holding you back from feeling well. And I remember you actually saying, I don't think this is your trauma. You said that to me once. I was like, yeah, I don't either. And I didn't even know what I was talking about because I've never experienced anybody like you or any sort of body talk sort of stuff. So I was like, but I just intuitively was feeling like, hey, I don't have this problem, but I am experiencing it. So you started talking about my family. So that's more like ancestral. We're going back in where we're actually inheriting stress.
All right.
So how does that work in the system? Because that's bizarre for someone to hear. Like, how can I inherit my mother or father's stress or my grandmother's stress?
So interestingly, let's say as a woman, when you conceive, and let's say you've got a female child. So that at the time of conception of this female child, you've got ovaries with all the eggs that this baby child is going to produce all its life, which means everything that's going on in your life at the moment, let's say this person has gone through some toxins or chemotherapies or emotional trauma or going through separation, whatever turmoil is going on, everything is imprinted on this fetus and its ovaries that are going to produce the next generation. So we are not only living what your parents have gone through, but what your grandma's the situations were, because women produces all the ovaries in fetus. Whereas for men, it's different. They produce sperm throughout the life.
Right.
So let's say a man goes through cancer treatment and then he becomes a father. Now all that is imprinted in his sperm. So basically his quality of life would have a huge impact on the next generation. Whereas for a woman, they go through cancer, it doesn't matter because the ovaries got imprinted and formed in the fetal life. So they were imprinted by the grandmothers, whatever was going on there, their levels of toxicity, emotional stress. So we do inherit our generational trauma because trauma and stress, many times it's imprinted at the DNA level.
Yeah, hold on. I actually want to make sure I understand something. So for the difference between men and women is we're born with basically all of our eggs, right? And those cycle out. So when we're born with, those eggs are imprinted for our future children, but they're actually imprinted by our mother.
Right.
Okay, so our mother's stress is actually being inherited by our children. Oh boy. That includes whether we have boy children or girl children.
Right.
Okay. Wow. Okay, that just puts my son in a whole different light for me. Okay. And then for men, so my son, for example, he has sperm that when he gets into puberty will come. But that sperm is not imprinted because it's newly made. So he's not passing on his sides of family's trauma. So really, he's only passing on whatever trauma he had in his life in that moment. And so really, women are passing on generational trauma, and men are just like, oh, if something happens in my so unfair. Another unfair thing in this life. Okay. So that makes it so much more important as women to actually try to deal with your own trauma. You can't really help your son, but you can maybe help your son's son or your son's daughter or your daughter's.
Right.
Yeah. So, is that right? Is that correct?
Yes, yes, that's totally spot on. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why it's such a responsibility when your unresolved emotions, trauma, stress, toxins, whatever, it gets hands on to the next generation.
Right.
Through our epigenetics, through our memory, and many times, unless you clear that memory, those symptoms keep flaring up. And that's not the stress or trauma. So it could be, let's say, ancestors that they went through famine, or they lived through industrial toxins, or anything major trauma that happened, abandonment in that particular generation. 3 generations later, this child has gone through all the symptoms, which are literally nothing to do with his story, but it's imprinted through the generation. And that's where with Body Talk treatments, we work on clearing that epigenetic markers and inherited stuff, and miraculous results, because many times this person has got perfect life, diet, lifestyle, work, everything is beautiful, but it's the inherited trauma that the body is processing. And with the treatments, we work on switching off those epigenetic markers and neutralizing it. They don't have to express through their life. And once you work on neutralizing it, you have neutralized it for the next generations.
Okay. Wow. So I need my son to be neutralized as well. Okay. Wait, that's another big responsibility for women, though, right?
I think it's for both men and women. Reproducing kids, imagine our wounds we are just handing on to the next generation.
Yeah.
And therefore, it becomes such a big responsibility to take care of yourself. Self-care is the biggest gift that you can give to anyone and to the next generation. Because if you're in a good mental, physical, emotional state, or looking after your diet and nutrition, you are just passing that on. Versus if you're in crisis, it's a huge liability that you're passing on to the next generations.
What this brings up is actually this fear that, okay, how do I fix this? Because basically, am I just doomed because my grandmother had a bad situation, or my grandfather had something bad happen to his life?
So basically, with Body Talk, we address concepts of Chinese medicine, then we work with Western medicine, lots of different energy-based concepts that we work with, clearing it up. What you could do on your own is, I would say, lifestyle. Any disease or stressor is just not originating from nowhere. It is accumulated. So let's say you have inherited certain stuff, and that is 2 markers on your DNA. Now this has to, let's say, reach to 12 markers to manifest as a disease. Okay. Where are those balanced 10 markers coming from? Your lifestyle, your stress, your sleep, your diet, your emotional trauma, not able to relax, whatever is going on. So lifestyle becomes a big responsibility. The way you take care of it.
That's really interesting what you just said. So maybe we're inheriting the propensity to something, but we still have control in our life, whether it necessarily manifests.
Yes.
And that's where the epigenetics part comes into, right? Where we have that propensity, but if we try to live in a healthy way, and take care of ourselves, it might not express itself.
So epigenetics is simply a word which means environmental influence on DNA. So epigenetics is on top of DNA. And you can think about it, it's like on and off switches, dimmers, amplifiers, and on and off lights. Now, stress, let's say diet, somebody living on coke, bed diet, or not exercising, having late nights, the biological clock is completely off, going through crazy work hours, emotional stress, whatever, toxins, drugs, and so on. Now that would distort these layer, which is on top of DNA, which we call epigenetics, by randomly switching on and off certain buttons, shifting certain tunings. which means this DNA, which has got a perfect ability to produce that protein, now it's producing wrong protein, wrong time, wrong quantity, and which is labeled into diseases. So we are products of our environment.
Right.
Environment plays a huge role in form of epigenetics.
Right.
The good news is it could be reversed. So let's say somebody had a lousy lifestyle and now suddenly they are going through detox, they're going for a meditation retreat, they've changed the lifestyle. You can undo all those damage at the epigenetic layer.
Oh, okay.
And that's what most of the time we're working with body talk treatments, clearing that particular trauma. Let's say it was ugly divorce and 1 year of massive trauma and all those emotions that are suppressed, that switched on this particular disease, autoimmune condition. So we are listening to the body story and clearing those markers and synthesizing that trauma so body can switch off that stress response.
So really working and taking care of yourself, you can really still reverse the epigenetics.
Yes.
You can't reverse the propensity, but it won't express itself.
Yes, and that's the beauty of this latest science, which says you're not a slave of your DNA. You are totally in control, because literally 90 to 95% of no matter what the health problem is, it's epigenetics. It's very rare, 5% of diseases that are genetic, which you don't have control with, where the DNA ladder is broken. But most of the time, it's the layer on top of DNA, which means it could be addressed.
So that's where the toxins and the stress and the emotional memories. So our ancestral trauma is just part of the genetics, but it's not part of the epigenetics.
We could be inherited the epigenetic layer. Yeah.
Okay, so you can also inherit the epigenetic layer.
And again, with treatments and all, you work on clearing that. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you can inherit the epigenetic layer, but you can also reverse the epigenetic layer.
I think as a parent, the biggest gift, once you have kids, you do put our world upside down to take care of them, to help them. We want the kids to be smart, not labeled as ADHD, and we do anything and everything to support them at any extent.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing that you can do to support them is taking care of yourself, especially in your fetal life, and those even 6 months before pregnancy.
When they're in your womb.
Yes, okay. And even preparing it a couple of months in advance.
Yeah.
Your mental sanity, your toxins, your relationships, your stress levels. So fetal life is literally onset of 80 to 90% of diseases, which even might manifest when they're 50 or 60 years old.
Yeah.
But they get triggered in the fetal life. Right. So as a parent, it's such a big responsibility. And it's not only women, it's mother and father.
Okay.
So
that's what I was going to ask you next. Yeah. Yeah.
So mother is the biological development and the father is psychological development.
Oh.
So let's say father could be on any part of the world and going through, let's say, bankruptcy or toxins or drugs, and that will hugely impact the development of the nervous system and their consciousness and fears and phobias and different stuff. Yeah, being a parent is a big responsibility. And better to do the work while you're planning and in pregnancy, because then you have got kids who are not imprinted with all that trauma and stress that you have to focus so much of undoing the damage.
Yeah.
If you start.
That makes sense. And all of this is because we just want them to be the best life that they possibly can. But you can only do how much you can do at the same time.
Yeah,
so
charity,
don't stress out, everyone. But yeah, exactly. Because you want to live your best life and you want them to live their best life.
Yeah, and then charity begins at home. As a parent, you want to do anything and everything, but start here. Yeah. Because once you are in good shape, young kids don't have a personality of their own. Yeah. They are literally feeding on parents' stresses, personality, positive or negative. So self-nurturing, self-care is the first step as a parent. And you see how that improves and reflects in your children's life. And that stops that ancestral trauma. Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. Now, how does all of this, fertility, pregnancy, even periods, post-pregnancy, postpartum, menopause, how is all of this impacted? So basically, our stress levels, our mental health, and our endocrine system, they're constantly in communication. So once you're under stress, your cortisol levels takes over, which means all other endocrine system and your hormones are totally compromised. Fertility is producing kids and sustaining, which is a more long-term planning for the nervous system. So your brain has to be out of the survival mode. So many times women with high stress levels, let's say they're working in corporate professions and they are in an intensive yang masculine role and constantly in high cortisol level, and therefore fertility or conception becomes difficult because the brain is simply not tapping into balancing those hormones, and they are not able to tap into that yin aspect. So it's all about balancing that yin and yang. So interesting. I just had this conversation with a Chinese medicine practitioner. She also talked about how fertility is by definition a yin, and
we really need, and yin is letting go and surrendering to your body's wisdom and all of that. But you're saying that in the world that we live in and work environments, it's naturally asking women to be more yang and bringing out that yang aspect. And I personally experienced that because I quit my job and I went to do consulting on my own so that I had more space to be in, because I noticed as I became higher and higher in the corporate world, I had to have more and more yang energy, be more aggressive, be more controlling. And I come home and I'm like, how am I supposed to relax?
Yeah, one of the story that comes to my mind was this woman. She was referred to me by a psychologist, and she was seeing this counselor for many months, and they were on a plateau where they couldn't shift. So she came for body talk treatment, and she was a CEO of a high company. She was going through IVF. She went through lots of miscarriages and a major anxiety, guilt, trauma, and trying to conceive. And with body talk treatments, after the first session, she was like, oh my God, I feel the whole weight of all that emotional trauma has lifted, because there was so much of guilt and fear and trauma of IVF and trying so hard to conceive. And it took a couple of sessions where she was able to completely wean off anti-anxiety medication and became pregnant naturally.
Wow.
Because fertility in our body's hormones, it's a natural function. And similarly, menopause is not supposed to be stressful, but it's all the accumulated stress that contributes to the problem. So when we're talking about menopause, when your estrogen levels drop, your secondary organ is your adrenals. But if your adrenals are burnt out with stress hormones, then you're totally wiped out. So stress plays a huge role with our hormonal balance, fertility, reproductive system, and that compromised yin chi, which goes into reproduction.
Okay, so
with these treatments, we're able to balance all that.
Okay, so the stress, the trauma, and energetic inheritance that we get, even if you don't have any current stresses in your life, they will still impact how your adrenals are firing. And then when your ovaries stop producing that estrogen, and your adrenals need to, there's no space for it.
Right.
So that's actually really fascinating to hear, because I always think of, I just need to make sure that I'm relaxed. I just need to make sure, no, I need to go back and heal all of the traumas that I don't even know about, actually, and unwire some of that stuff.
Yeah, and
so that I can have a good menopause.
That's true. And that's where this body talk is miraculous, because each treatment is like reading a chapter. And the chapter is whatever your innate wisdom is ready to surface now.
Okay.
So we are not working with problems. You could tell me a list of 10 problems, but in the session, we'll work only what your innate wisdom would surface as a priority, because your body is extremely intelligent. It knows the sequencing, what needs to be addressed, and when it's ready to heal what.
Okay, let's talk about that a little bit. I think you talked about getting into this alpha state, and you get into this alpha state to connect with the person's energy and cellular communication and stuff. How do you talk to it? Like, because the word body talk, how do you talk to it? Is it
so basically
actual physical, like how does it actually happen?
So physically, we work with a biofeedback system, which is a muscle testing, which is a very gentle muscle testing. So when I train people to become a practitioner, it's like a physical yes and no response, where a restricted movement is a no and a flexible movement is a yes. So that's the starting point. Now, eventually, with practice and using that alpha state of mind, you can do it intuitively. So when you see me doing sessions, either my hand is on a client and you hardly see any movement, or even I do all the sessions on Zoom.
Yeah.
So basically, you're using that yes and no response and navigating the whole protocol, which could be asking lots of questions regarding, let's say, physical health or emotional trauma, or is there any belief systems? So there's a whole languaging program and protocol of lots of tools and techniques. And these tools and techniques are Chinese medicine, Western medicine, psychology, concepts of osteopathy, a huge difference.
Tools and techniques are often the questions you ask the body as well.
It's a languaging program.
Okay.
Are we working with liver? Is there emotional trauma? Is there a environmental factor? So there's a languaging program to navigate. And tools and techniques are basically all the tools we have.
Okay.
And that navigating program, whether you can do physically through muscle testing or intuitively, that will help you surface the story. And the story, let's say, is a parasite that is sitting in the liver, a trauma that happened when you were 5 years old, and an accident that you went through, or a particular scar tissue. Now, how do I know this information without the client telling me? The body's telling me through that muscle testing and through that intuitive feedback and asking those questions. And basically, then I'm narrating that story. We're working on your liver. It looks like there's a trauma.
Yeah.
And client might resonate. They're like, yeah, I totally understand that, or I know about it. Or they're like, I don't know. I have no idea.
It might be their level of awareness, right?
Yes, because many a times a lot of trauma is suppressed in the subconscious mind.
Yes, yeah.
So I worked with one client. She came to Hong Kong and she had this asthma. She was living on medication, totally feeling suffocated for years. So she came for body talk treatment. And first thing that showed up in her session was some sexual abuse from certain time, which the mind had completely blocked it.
Oh.
And I had to check with the innate wisdom, can I share or talk about it to the client? And it said no. So I had to tell her, okay, we are going back in time, whatever, so and so year, it looks like work environment, and there's a particular stressor, and I'm picking up a lot of fear and trauma. So whatever comes to your mind, just think about it while we are doing the treatment. And she's, I have no clue. So I said, no problem. So we went ahead and did the treatment. She came back after a week and all her symptoms were gone. Her memory surfaced and she could tell me exactly what happened. Though while I'm doing the treatment, the innate wisdom would just give me enough information what is required for the treatment. Again, respecting the clients, do I need to share with them if they're ready to hear it and handle it consciously or not? That's the guidance I get from the innate wisdom.
You know a lot about everybody. Yeah, but that's amazing. That's incredible.
Yeah. And then it was like all the symptoms disappeared and she was so fascinated. She became a body talk practitioner.
Wow. Yeah. Honestly, this is inspiring me to come to your next Mindscape workshop. That's really...
And the beauty is when you're going through counseling and therapy, you're talking about the problem. You're working it out over and over again by talking about it. You're working with your conscious mind, which is only 10% of your makeup. That's why you need so many sessions. With body talk treatments, you're using this biofeedback system to communicate with the subconscious mind and surface the story. I might be able to get the whole story if that's what innate wisdom wants to share with me, or just a particular age, 5 years old, and some stress, or a particularly just a little bit, one or two pieces, whatever information needed to unravel that stressor. That much information body would share with me. Not necessarily client has to talk about it, relive the trauma, and something that will, let's say, needs a therapy ongoing. With body talk, it just could be just one session and it's completely
that's fascinating. I have two things I want to ask you about that, because the first is just a comment on what you're saying, the therapy and talking, counseling and everything, although there has its place. I've actually heard a lot of times you go to these kind of inner child healing workshops or these deep conversations with your therapist or something, you come back, you feel like you've worked through a lot of stuff, but you're almost comatose after you come back because you've talked and relived all of that and you think you've released it, but actually you've enhanced it in a way because you've relived it while talking about it. So yes, it's amazing and it's so important to address what's going on with you, but your mind has one wisdom, but your body has another wisdom. So maybe your mind has released the thought, but your body still remembers and it's completely exhausted and stressed after that conversation because it has gone through all of its stress responses through that conversation. You haven't reprogrammed it, you've made it relive it in your body. Then you still don't feel that, and what's it called, that connection between mind and body. Hey, I should be feeling better. I just talked about it. It's actually the cells start to behave in the same way that they did during that stress response, right?
Yeah, spot on.
Okay.
And that's why this work is way more subtler. Client doesn't need to relive the problem, and it works so much more effective because you're resolving it.
That's so fascinating. I was reading someone else who's written a book on trauma, and I'll put it in the comments in the podcast. I can't remember the name right now, but she talked about microdosing therapy. And I feel like what you're saying is body talk allows you to release that trauma without having to deal with it all at once. So you're microdosing it in different sessions, and
it's many times it's just one session to resolve whole of the story.
Wow. Okay.
It's usually you never need to work on it again. And it's very subtle, which means there are certain techniques with eye movement and NLP, but never diving and reliving the whole story. It's just...
So how do you actually reprogram or release?
So basically with body talk, I would say the genius behind it is Dr. John Weltham. He's no more. And the way he has built up these techniques are concepts of combination of Eastern and Western medicine. So working with meridians, NLP, centers of the brain, psychology, put together so there's a particular treatment which we call active memory synthesis. We are using eye movements like a mouse of the computer to surface that emotional trauma. surface, dissociate, synthesize, and release, and then releasing it through your diaphragm, through your gut and intestines.
Yeah, because I remember you would tap me a lot. So is that?
Yeah, so with body talk treatments, we program the treatments by activating the head, heart, and gut brain. So we are working with 3 brains all the time, activating the central nervous system. So the head brain is more like your computer that will send signals to fix it. So each time when I'm running a treatment, it's like, let's say in our everyday normal functioning, your brain, when you're functioning well and healthy, your brain is scanning all your body's frequency through breath cycle. And that's why in yogic philosophy, it's called perfect breath is perfect health. Because with your each deep breath in and out, your brain is looking at all the frequencies, your densest frequency, your bones, muscles, your middle frequency, fluids, and your higher frequencies, thought patterns, emotions, chakras, and meridians. So with each deep breath in and out, the brain is scanning where the problem is. So let's say your little toe is bleeding, or you're feeling depressed or anxious, or there's a parasite sitting in the liver. Brain is able to pick up on that information, and your innate wisdom can send corrections by scanning that information and sending the repair work.
Wow.
Now, when we're doing body talk treatment with this biofeedback system and this whole communication tools, I'm able to surface where the miscommunication is. So let's say it's the liver and kidney, there's emotional trauma, and there are toxins that are impairing it. And we are highlighting this information by activating the central nervous system. Hey, look at this communication networks and fix it.
Ah, okay.
And then tapping on the heart is to store it and memorize it. When we talk about heartbeat being our survival, it's constantly with our blood, it's pumping information. Now, our body is constantly regenerating. So think about your body like a river with fresh water every day. Every 3 to 4 days, our gut lining is completely healed, renewed. Every 3 weeks, you've got whole new liver. Right. Every 1 year, each and every atom and cell of the body is regenerating. Now, despite of this fact, a person could have a disorder that's going on for many years, cancer to degeneration and so on. So what's happening there? Our heart is holding the energetic blueprint of how this cell is, and it keeps reproducing same sick cell. So when we are tapping on the heart, it's like we are reinforcing that correction into the memory of the heart. So here on, when the cycle of reproduction happens, it can produce healthier set of information. And then gut brain is all about assimilating and integrating it. So body talk treatments are all about activating these 3 centers of the brain to function in coherence to integrate these corrections.
Okay, so if I were to summarize, you get into this alpha state, and then you connect with kind of what's going underneath, and you ask it different questions using the muscle testing and all of the techniques. Right. And then with that identified stress and trauma through that conversation you've had with the body, you actually identify the location, and then with that you tell the different brains of the body by tapping it, like by stimulating it to tell it, oh, now let's fix this is, go there, fix this, go there, fix this. So it's actually, you're telling the body. What is innate wisdom?
So innate wisdom is our inborn ability to heal. Our body's knowledge, and that knowledge is guiding me towards this liver meridian is blocked, or there's a particular parasite and somehow immune system is not able to tackle it because of all this anger that is. So the innate wisdom is our body's natural ability to heal. The synchronity, the communication, the homeostasis, and it knows exactly what our priorities are, what are the pathways, what are the different layers. So body talk is basically, we're not just working on the physical body. We all are aware of physical body. Western medicine, if you're working with a chiropractor or a physiotherapy, it's addressing your physical body. Then we have got energy body. So let's say meridians, chakras, homeopathy, subtler bodies working at that. Then we've got mind body, a counselor or a therapist or a psychotherapist working on that layer of the body. We've got 4th layer of the body, which is called intuitive mind or superconscious mind. And with body talk, we work on that 4th layer. And the 5th layer is the bliss body, where you don't need any healing system. It's pure spontaneous healing. Now, each lower layer is controlled by the higher body. So if you're working only on the physical body, the results are very slow and stagnant because the root cause could be sitting in different layers. And this is the most densest form of the body. So if you're working on energy body, the benefits will trickle down to the physical body. If you're working on mental body, it will trickle down and repair. But if you're working on all the bodies and on the 4th layer, you see this whole trickle down impact and the physical symptoms disappearing because the root cause is many a times the physical manifestation is the last one. So let's say somebody got a tumor and they got diagnosed and labeled. That tumor could be developing for the last 5 years. It could be sitting in emotional, psychological mind. It could be rooted and disturbance in the meridians and different layers of the body. And unless we address the whole picture, we are not doing a complete job. So through medicine, through surgery, they got chemo, they got it removed, fixed the only physical body. But the roots are not cleared, which means after a couple of years, there's a remission. The problem constantly lingers because the root cause has not been addressed. And therefore, body talk is a consciousness-based medicine where consciousness is the core behind manifestation. And you're working with all these 5 layers of the body.
So that's what kind of brings us to the conversation about this shift to consciousness-based medicine in combination with science. This is still science, but like traditional medicines that we are seeing. And I think the importance you're seeing is increasing. People are recognizing that trauma exists. What are some misconceptions around that? Do you think that you've been able to talk through with your clients, or what do you think is
the biggest block that I've seen is towards distance healing? Like first thing people will say, okay, but what are you doing? How are you talking to my gut and my gut microbiome?
I'll be honest, I struggle with that. That's why I always ask you for an in-person meeting.
Right.
Because I'm like, wait, but how does this work?
And I would say there is more awareness on it since COVID because everything is online. People understand the concept of healing. So basically, when you're talking...
it worked for my mother who did distance with you. But I think it's just, like you said, it's a psychological block. I was like, no, let's meet.
Because when you're working with mind, your mind you could be sitting here, it can go into the past, it can go into future, it can visit any galaxy. It has no boundaries of time and space. And with body talk, when you're working with mind-body medicine, it's not the physical body. It's not a manipulation. It's not a physical massage or anything physical diagnosis.
Yeah.
So the major block that I get is people will say, I understand the concept, but how are you working? So we are working with the concept of meridian. Instead of actually taking needles and working on those acupuncture points, I'm mentally running through those meridians and activating it by running some programs. Or we are looking at surfacing. So using the concepts of all these chakras, meridians, acupuncture points, or Western medicine optimizing the immune system, running a cellular repair treatment on the damage on DNA by vaccination. So energy medicine is basically working with the energy and the concept of it. So you can physically do it, and with physical there's a limitation. You can't get to the cellular level, you cannot work at different layers of the brain and all, but energetically through your mind and focus you can access and you can work with that whole blueprint, and that will shift. So it's the mind-body connection. I think that's the biggest sort of block many people may have, who are, for some people this work could be new. They don't understand the concept of energy medicine and how it works at distance.
But we did just talk about it. It is actually a state of mind, like an alpha state of mind that you get into. So it is very scientific in how you're approaching. And I think it's at this point we do have to recognize that there is everything in our world is made out of energy, and of course our body is as well. So this is just another layer of science that we need to actually really understand.
And nowadays there are machines. They can scan your energy body, your chakras, to literally all the frequencies. So now we have developed science to literally scan it at every different level. And the beauty of this is that you could be working on somebody sitting in ICU, or a lot of elderly who cannot talk and they're suffering. So I've got a lot of clients who are elderly Chinese women who have been on possibly every possible medicine, dementias in that old age, you can't go through so many sort of harsh medications and all. But working with body talk, they're weaned off dementia medication, anxiety medication, their gut has healed, like transformational shift without them knowing anything. But I'm like working with their daughter or their caregiver we are communicating, or she'll be giving me the feedback, and I'm doing a treatment and sending them information. So here you bypass the concept of logic mind. So you could be working on a child or an elderly or somebody in ICU. It's not the conscious mind. You're working with their subconscious, you're working with their innate intelligence, and communicating and repairing at that level.
It's actually a very big responsibility because you can access something that people don't know how to. Like, so can you do body talk on yourself?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So you can actually, you've worked on your own mind. Is it a little bit overwhelming because then sometimes more stuff?
It could be that your own agendas might come in when you're working for yourself. You're not as a neutral observer. So biggest place to be as a practitioner is being a neutral observer. And that sets you up to be able to listen to the body's innate wisdom. And with body talk, you can't do any damage or harm because anything. So let's say I'm working on something which is not your body's priority. So your body will simply not integrate it. So I wasted that half an hour or 20 minutes, but there would be no adverse effect.
But that's because you wanted it to be a priority if you're doing it on yourself. Yeah. You might have a different agenda than your body actually has,
Right.
which
Yeah.
is so fascinating. Okay.
Yeah.
Like you're not listening to your body then
Yeah.
because you're like, no, but this is what I want in life. Yeah.
So generally speaking, you can't do any damage or there are no healing crises because you're working with the priorities, but you can't, your body cannot process what is not its priorities. And therefore it's extremely safe and non-invasive with no medicines and so on, and amazing for kids and elderly or people in vulnerable stage where they can't handle harsh medications and treatments.
Do you have any stories that you can share about women who are trying to get pregnant or who are going through menopause or anything like that you've seen?
Yes, with fertility, I've got like few different stories and clients who were struggling with IVF, IUI, and just not getting through. And with body talk treatments, we were able to clear all the trauma and stress, and they could get.
You mentioned that lady. Yeah, that's fascinating.
And again, with menopause and all, getting into these bioidentical hormones and all. Okay, I would say use Western medicine as a last resort because it has got a lot of side effects. So many times with body talk treatments, you'll see amazing results. Because when we're talking about hormones, if you can tackle that adrenals, the stress response, all the hormones are aligned with it.
And then you can just produce it on your own.
So hot flushes to memory loss and a lot of menopausal symptoms is clearing the stress response and reshifting the body into that parasympathetic nervous system.
Okay.
And many times it's our belief systems, right? Around aging, degeneration.
Belief systems also tell, it's interesting because we don't realize that our belief systems are actually telling ourselves what to do as well.
Those are filters through which all the communication conversation goes through, how we imprint. An interesting book to read on it is Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Lipton, where he talks about how our belief system, literally at the cellular level, it alters our chemistry.
Fascinating. I'll definitely put it on my list. Okay, great. So now conscious-based medicine is reshaping medicine. What advice would you give to someone who's struggling? What's one simple step they can, or their hormones, or just trauma in general?
Yeah, I think the key message here would be self-care. Now, the self-care could be somebody like creating me time, going for a nice walk, or whatever that hobby that opens up that passion and helps the brain to switch out of that survival mode. It could be being kinder to yourself with good night quality of sleep, or nurturing or taking care of yourself. So yeah, self-care is the biggest responsibility, because when you are in a good shape, physically, mentally, emotionally, you're an asset to everybody around you, because we all are energetically connected. So imagine if I'm depressed and anxious and stressed and a lot going on. For you sitting next to me, you'll be tuning into all the trauma.
Right.
If I'm vibrating at a very positive, harmonious place, then that is just a gift to people around you and to your family and to your kids.
Right.
So charity begins at home. Take care of yourself. Only your own mental, physical, emotional health is your prime responsibility, because once you mess it up, nobody can do it for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I do want to go back and ask you one question, because I was coming to a close, but I just remembered, is that some people are coming to you for body talk, right? And this lady came to you who had this sexual abuse experience, but you couldn't talk about it, and you healed it, and she came back and told you memory. But how do you know you're dealing with trauma? What's a symptom, or is it just any disease, any problem? Or like, how can you know, oh, I really need to just address this stuff?
So when there's emotional trauma, let's say somebody's going through a tough time and it's a difficult relationship, or it's an ongoing situation that they're stuck in, and emotionally it's too much for them to process, the body will convert it into fatigue. And they're constantly exhausted, and they're like, oh, my diet is so good and I'm exercising, why am I feeling so exhausted and fatigued? Because body is using that trauma and just transforming it into fatigue or an inflammation. So all these symptoms are basically a trauma in a certain way, which your body is just diverting it, because psychologically your computing power is exhausted and you can't process it anymore. Now it's expressing through a degeneration. And each part of the body has got a consciousness. So let's say when we talk about knees controlled by kidney meridian as per Chinese medicine, and all your fear is accumulated. So lots of time when you see degenerative knees, a common theme, fear of standing up, accumulated fear. So each of the emotion has got a housing place as per Chinese medicine. So all your anger, resentment belongs to the liver meridian.
Right.
So where we store stuff, then simply because your body's computing power is just exhausted with dealing with the stressor and living a normal life.
Manifest in these kind of symptoms
Yes.
that don't make sense sometimes.
Right.
Fatigue, anxiety,
Yeah, flare-ups,
bloating. Like I've had clients come to me being like, I'm anxious, but this isn't my personality.
Yeah.
And I was like, I know it's not your personality. You have some reprogramming going on, you have some gut dysbiosis going on, you have like your adrenals are exhausted. There's something that
Yep.
you're just in a mess.
Yep.
And it's not because that's who you are fundamentally.
Many
person.
times fears, phobia, sudden anxiety. I had one
Yeah.
client who was air hostess on her life and she had developed fear of flying. Or claustrophobia, it's like from nowhere, your body's just mechanism is flaring up stuff because it's storing all that stress and trauma.
Yes.
No matter what the symptom is, it's all about healing the core of it.
Interesting. Okay. I cannot recommend you more. Thank you so much for coming and chatting with us. And I'm so excited to have everyone listen to this podcast.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I love to speak about it and help as many people possible.
I learned so much, and I love this topic because I think it's so widespread and so incredibly important. And like you said, those different levels, it's like I can heal someone's gut dysbiosis, but if they're still traumatized by something.
And I would say as a parent, like we want safe stuff for your kids, and we want strong, independent kids. And that is by clearing all that could be imprinted on them.
Yeah, so important. Yes, to be able to be pregnant, be fertile, go through menopause, have healthy periods. All of our hormones have to work, and the stress, trauma, emotional stress, and ancestral stress, inherited epigenetics, which we just discussed, can actually all impact our cycles, our fertility, so it's definitely something that both men and women have to deal with, but women who are going through all this need to deal with it even more importantly. Thank you so much.
Thank you.